Hi, I'm Jean Nolte, editor at Fons & Porter.
And I'm Colleen Tauke. I'm the sewing specialist at Fons & Porter. In this tutorial, we'll show you how to assemble a couple of different techniques to create Impression of Autumn.
To get the pattern for this quilt, go to our website. All right, so this quilt we're working on is a quilt that started with a bunch of 10-inch squares in autumn prints, and then 10-inch squares of a contrasting semi-solid. So it has two really fun techniques. And I'm going to move these out of the way because we're first going to make 4 at a time flying geese units.
And we as quilters like to use our time as efficiently as possible. So if we can make multiple units in one little tiny technique, we'll go for it.
All right, so the first thing we're going to do is take one of our big squares, then we have some smaller print squares, and you can see that I've drawn lines here, and these are stitching lines. You use the Fons & Porter 1/4 inch seam marker here, put the yellow right across from corner to corner, and draw on each side of that on all 4 of your little squares. So once you've done that, we're going to put 2 of them on top of this big square, so that those lines actually line up and the edges are all lined up. And if you want to, you can put a couple pins. If not, that's fine too.
This is a long expanse. Sometimes I'll go ahead and put just a pin in each one so they don't walk as I'm sending them through the machine.
You're going to sew on the lines that you just drew, and you'll stitch off of the first square right onto the second one when you get down to the bottom there.
You'll see as I'm stitching here and they come up that the 2 smaller squares do overlap, so you haven't made a mistake. That's the way they should be.
All right, now while she's doing that, I'm going to go ahead and just cut this one that we already had made. When she gets to that bottom corner, she's going to
just kind of
pivot and keep going. You don't have to cut it off. And I'm just going to cut in between here. You don't have to be perfectly in the center, but it came pretty close. Okay, so you've now got 2 units that look like this. I've had people tell me they think it looks like a heart. So you're going to press that toward those 2 smaller triangles.
I think it looks like a heart because this technique is just sweet. Because a lot of times when we go to create our triangle squares, we can get a little distorted. And when we get done, we're thinking, why isn't it quite? Because there's more cutting when you are making these units in the traditional method, you have a little bit more room for error. So if we make it in large pieces, like this.
All right, so now
they come out really accurate.
We're going to take one of those other 2 squares and put on each one of these, and while you sew on those drawn lines, I'll finish pressing this one.
So this will be flying geese unit number 1 and 2, and 3 and 4 will come off the one she's pressing right now.
So same thing. Put that other one with the drawn lines in the corner.
You come into my house, we could sew really fast if we 2-man it like this.
2 at a time, yeah.
Yeah, it's great.
Move this out of the way.
The nice part about this technique also is that you don't have to write your 1/4 inch seam allowance. You're just sewing on the lines.
Right. Okay, so then you would sew this one also. And then what I'm going to do is take my ruler and my rotary cutter and just cut this apart the same way we did the first one. And you'll see when I press these, we have 2 flying geese units here. I'm going to press toward the smaller triangles. 1. 2.
This one might not be quite as straight. I'm not sewing at the best angle, but here we go.
Put those over there.
I'm going to go ahead and cut this part.
Just cut that with a scissors.
You could also use a scissors. We sometimes forget that we can actually use the scissors to cut our blocks.
And then when you put those out, there's 3.
There's 3.
And there's 4.
And you'll see that the flying geese units are used towards the center, make kind of a cross through the center of this quilt.
So that's one technique. The other technique we have is 8 at a time.
Yeah, 4 at a time wasn't fast enough. Let's do 8 at a time.
So these are triangle squares, which you make 8 at a time. You start with one large square of your background. All right, and I'm going to need that. So on this one,
you want to do it on the back side.
Oh yeah,
flip
probably
it over.
better flip that over.
It's a little lighter on the back. It's easier to see where the lines are going to be.
I'm going to draw a line from corner to corner.
Now this is a little bit different. The reason why we're doing corner to corner is we don't have a tool that will get us our seam allowance quickly. So we're doing it more the traditional method, drawing the line diagonally corner to corner, and then going out a 1/4 inch from each side of that line.
And I'm going to turn it around and draw a 1/4 inch away from it on the other side as well.
I ran across this technique not too long ago, and I thought, 8 at a time, how fun is that?
I thought 4 at a time flying geese was fun. Now we have to do the same thing on the other direction.
So we're basically doing cross-cut lines, or stitching lines from both directions, diagonals.
So I draw that.
So once you had your 10-inch squares ready, you can easily just sit down and mark a whole bunch of these at once.
I would mark all of them before I started stitching, because then you can just
piggyback one block after the other, and it's going to be amazing how fast you get them all done.
All right, and so I draw the center line a little bit lighter and then try to draw those a little heavier for you. So then you're going to take one of your print squares and place this on top.
Line
them all up. And then what you would do is sew on all the lines. Now, we have one that's already
so you can
sewn.
See that we've sewn on those stitching lines.
So then,
this is where the fun gets going.
All right, so now I'm going to get some of this out of the way. So I want to cut.
We're going to cut this in 4 different directions. So we're going to cut.
So I'm going to first.
Which one
first,
I'm going to.
I think I'm going to cut the
diagonal.
Don't you think?
Okay. Well, we're using a rotating mat here, and that way we don't have to reposition our pieces. We can just rotate the mat.
Right. Which makes it a little bit easier.
Get some buzz in there.
All right.
Keep them all nice and neat together.
All right.
So we're actually going to cut diagonally in both directions.
All right.
And then you look at going, how am I going to open that up? Well, we're not done yet. There's 2 more cuts. Now we're going to go, this is a 10-inch block, so that means that the center is 5 inches. So line up on
I still get my
one side. You get.
Oh, that's the half. I need to flip that around.
You always have to use the right side of the room. That helps.
It came out of half.
Okay.
So then
so
I'm
5
going to
inches
cut
over. Now we're doing it like a window pane, straight up and down. And we're going to rotate the mat again so that we're doing straight up and down.
And then
always
5 inches again.
Safest to cut away from our bodies. And now it starts to become quite evident that each one of these is now a triangle square.
You see there are 8 of them. And so then you just would want to go ahead and press them open.
Make sure you press seam allowances all the way, press it all the way open so you don't have a false stitch.
All right, and I'm not going to take the time to press all 8 now. But so here's what you'd end up with, 8 of those. And you need 16 in each corner of your quilt.
So create flying geese 4 at a time. Create triangle squares 8 at a time. Arrange with a center block, and you've got an impression of autumn. Thanks for joining us.
For more of our videos, visit our website,